There's a protocol that used to be used far more often and was actually exposed a lot of times, and it ended up causing problems. This was the Simple Network Management Protocol. While SNMP is still in use, it is far more locked down as a general rule than it used to be. However, you may still be able to find devices that support SNMP. And even though SNMP used to be far easier to interact with than it is today, if they're using up to date versions, it's still worthwhile knowing how to use SNMP walk. So the very first thing that we're going to use is we're going to use version 1, which is the really old version, was deprecated a couple of decades ago, except that there are a number of embedded devices that may still support version 1, and there really are a lot of devices around that still use it. And you can still turn it on, as you'll see right here. 192.168.86.41 is going to be my target. So I'm specifying version 1 right there. And then version 1, in terms of authentication, such as it was, there were community strings, and typically they were public and private. Public meant read only, and private meant read write. But since this was what everybody implemented, wasn't really anything in the way of any sort of security. Certainly there was no encryption, and this is very, very weak authentication. I can do SNMP walk, and what SNMP walk does is it connects to the SNMP server or the SNMP daemon on my target system, and it just walks through every variable that we can get from the SNMP server. So let me slow this down a little bit and we can see what we can get. So the very first thing that we can get is really the uname string. This is a Linux system, and this is the host name. And then we've got the kernel version, and then you've got the rest of the information about when the kernel was built and the type of kernel that it is. So now we've got the number of days that it has been up, and then there are a number of other strings that we can see. We can see the boot image that was used here, and really that's kind of apparently all we get out of this particular system. Other systems will give you things like interface information, for example, so you can get the number of interfaces out of it. So that's version 1. Now, version 3 is a little bit different. So with version 3, we've got some options here. I'm going to specify authentication, but no privacy. And then I'm going to say that the user is auth only user, and that's specified in the SNMP configuration. I'm going to give my password here. Again, this isn't a great password, but that's my authentication string that goes with the user. And we're going to use MD5 to send the password over. So we're not just sending it in the clear, we're hashing it first. And then finally, we've got our target IP address. So I can provide that, and it looks a bit like we got more information out of version 3 than we did out of version 1. So again, we see the same thing here that we did with version 1. And here is where we've got the interface information. We've got the loopback interface, and then we've got a number of counters with variables here. If we were to look up this OID or object identifier, we could determine exactly what this counter 32, meaning 32-bit variable, actually told us, and then we could figure out what the value here is. We can just kind of keep flipping through. You can see that we've got some IP addresses here. So here are the IP addresses that are configured. This is going to be the default gateway for this particular system. So this is the loopback address. This is the interface address. And then we've got the network mask for the IP address, and then the network mask for this IP address here. And then we've got the network address itself. And so we can just kind of keep flipping through, and you'll see all of the data that has been provided to us very nicely by the SNMP server. All I had to know was the authentication information, and this particular server gives out more authenticated information than it does just public information. So SNMP Walk, as you can see, can be a really valuable tool, and you can use it for any of the versions, whether it's version 1, version 2, or version 3. Version 3, you may have to do encryption in order to communicate with the SNMP server, meaning privacy, or you may just have to know the username and the password and then just know whether it does MD5 or SHA-1 or something like that. SNMP Walk is a great utility in order to extract information from systems that are actually running an SNMP daemon.